Have you ever wanted to play an arcade game created by a Japanese company where you play as an American who mows down Japanese fighter pilots by the thousands in World War II? I kinda doubt it because that's insanely specific, but if by some chance you have, 1942 has you covered. Capcom entered the video game industry a good bit later than the other giants of the 80s. Their first arcade game didn't come out until 1984. They made up for their slow start with a very high level of quality, with their fourth game, 1942, becoming a huge hit. Its success started the 1940X series and allowed Capcom to keep making video games such as Ghosts and Goblins, Mega Man, and of course Street Fighter. As for the reason why you shoot down the Japanese, the reason is money. Capcom decided to appeal to the American market, meaning you play as an American fighter ace in World War II, and you shoot down the Japanese. That's so funny to me for some reason. I mean, could you imagine an American game studio doing that? And all of the enemies are Japanese planes that actually exist in real life, and were flown by Japanese pilots, who, considering that this was released in 1984, some of them were probably still alive when this game came out. Is it just me? Is this not an insane thing to do? Today I'll be reviewing the NES version, although I am very familiar with the arcade version, which I played mostly through the Capcom Classics collection on PS2. It's a very high-quality arcade compilation with a ton of early Capcom games, and I would highly recommend it. Anyway, starting with the title screen, it's fine, I guess. It's very simple and plain, which is completely standard for early NES games like this. I will say I like the shading on the numbers. It's simple, but it's a nice touch. If you couldn't tell from the footage, 1942 is a vertical scrolling shoot-'em-up. Every level starts with you taking off from an aircraft carrier and ends with you landing on an aircraft carrier. Conveniently, at the start of each level, you get to know how many levels are left. The game takes place during an unspecified World War II naval battle. As a result, most of the background is the Pacific Ocean, although they do have islands later on. From a gameplay and visual standpoint, it's very similar to Xevious, except you don't have to fight enemies on the ground as well. The controls are pretty standard. You move around with the D-pad, fire with B, and you do a loop-de-loop with the A button. It's an evasive maneuver that lets you avoid bullets and enemy planes entirely for a few seconds, but you also have a limited amount of them. You can only roll 3 times per level, so usually whenever I use one, I feel like I'm wasting it. Combine that with the fact that you get a bunch of extra points for saving them, and I usually completely forget they exist. I'm sure it would be very useful if you figured out how to use it, but I just can't be bothered to do that. You have infinite continues, and this is an NES game, so your score doesn't matter. On the arcade, it's pretty useful, but here, I mean, who cares really? This game also has a pretty decent set of power-ups. Every once in a while, a squadron of fighters will appear, and if you shoot them all down, you get a bunch of extra points, kinda like the challenge stages in Galaga. On top of your points, you also get a power-up for your troubles. The manual says there are 6 kinds of power-ups. One of them lets you shoot 4 shots instead of 2. One of them clears all of the enemies off the screen. One of them gives you 2 extra planes that shoot at your sides, which is kind of extremely broken. One of them gives you 1 extra roll, and there are 2 other kinds that do nothing but give you points. The extra planes are very useful for crowd control, although they can be shot down just like you can. The other power-up that gives you 2 extra bullets doesn't improve your range at all, and since the small planes go down in one hit, it's only useful for the larger ones. As a result, they both feel pretty balanced, and it also feels like you've earned both of them. Shooting down an entire squadron while there are about 10 other planes trying to kill you is much harder than you'd think. While we're on the topic of difficulty though, I will admit that the NES version is much easier than the arcade one. Which makes sense. I mean, the arcade version is just way too complex and fast for the NES, especially from an NES game this early. It also doesn't really get harder as you go on. I mean, there are more planes and also more coming from the bottom, which can kill you very easily if you're not paying attention. But I don't know, the planes don't get faster or anything, so it kind of feels like you're just playing the same stage forever and ever. They shoot more bullets, but not a lot more, and also they're in the same patterns. If you can take out all of the small planes before they come to the bottom of the screen, you're in 0 danger from them. The most dangerous part of the game is probably the planes that come in from the bottom of the screen. There's also a boss plane, which is kinda cool, I guess. Interestingly, the boss plane is a planned bomber that was supposed to be able to fly all the way from Japan to New York. The war was going terribly for the Japanese by 1944 though, so it got cancelled, meaning this gigantic plane only exists in the world of video games. Now, if you try fighting this boss from the bottom of the screen, it can be pretty difficult. The targets you have to hit are the propellers, which have a combined health pool, so you don't have to shoot all 6 of them down or anything like that. This is pretty hard to do. Unless you realize you can just hug the side of it and it can't shoot you. It can only shoot behind itself, meaning if you cling to its side, you are completely and utterly safe. Unfortunately, I didn't realize that, so I ended up dying and killing it at the same time my first time. On a technical level, this game works perfectly fine. There's some screen flickering, but that's to be expected for an arcade port from 1985 on the NES. This game runs pretty well considering how many things are on screen, and I'll give credit for that. What I won't give credit for is the absolutely terrible music. I've purposefully muted it for this video, but I'm about to play some of it, so warning for that. Are you ready yet? Okay, here it goes. Yep, it is just a drum beat and one note. It's technically the same song as on the arcade, but on that it's much more palatable. It actually sounds kinda cool in the arcade, but the NES just isn't capable of making the sounds that are necessary to make this not sound ungodly. There's only one song the entire game. There are also little jingles that play whenever you beat a stage, die, or get a game over. Those are okay, they're just kind of worse versions of the arcade music, but I still feel like this game is a full letter grade better if you mute it. Just turn your sound off and you'll be fine. The NES port of 1942 is a pretty good one, all things considered. If I was a kid in the 80s who was buying the NES game because I loved the arcade game, I wouldn't feel ripped off. I'd be a little disappointed, but I wouldn't feel ripped off at all. It's also pretty repetitive, which is my main complaint against it, other than the awful music. I couldn't imagine playing it for longer than about 20 minutes at a time. Not as good as the arcade version, but that's to be expected. When it comes to the ranking, I'll put it with the other arcade games that I've liked so far. I didn't love it, but it was a high quality port, and I can appreciate it for what it is. Anyway, 7 out of 10, thank you for watching, have a good day, like and subscribe, bye!